If I had a nickel for every time I grew fond of a character I was previously indifferent to with white hair, a knack for planning, an official gender bent design, and a severed connection with an unholy monster, okay, someone give my writer a raise. Never in the several years that I've been making content on and off did I ever imagine I'd be unironically making videos about the Loud House. Usually my palette for critiques is nostalgia, recency, or animated shows with overarching narratives, yet somehow this simple cartoon about a boy in modern suburbia showing us how he survives with 10 sisters still managed to make me overlook all that, even with my minor track record for dissing it.
Flashback.
I don't know what it is with Hollywood and big budget entertainment, but not many actual dorks, if any at all, require a lisp, need to talk with big words, or have a condescending demeanor with strangers. She makes puns and doesn't make it her whole personality.
End of flashback.
Looking back at that, I think I judged the show and its characters a little too unfairly for the most part, and I kinda blame the fact that I didn't watch enough episodes before then to start. Although what I said wasn't entirely wrong. I mean, yeah, Lisa's a smug nerd who gives off Sheldon Cooper vibes, and I know I can't stand the latter, and yeah, Luann makes one too many puns. But as I watched more and more of these episodes, there was something more to these characters than just tropes or whatever I might have judged them by. Her hubris can get the better of her, but there's been great episodes that show that she's not some mindlessly written comedic tool. Despite the cartoonish implausibility of what she's capable of, she still shows genuine and believable vulnerabilities in several instances, which is something I can't say was done well enough or soon enough for her comparison. It says a lot when this 5-year-old can provoke a better sense of genuine sympathy and charm compared to the poster child for quirky smartasses. As for Luann, well...
Lighten up, Francis.
I really do take back what I implied. I don't think puns really define her character too much, nor to a fault. And frankly, it kinda grew on me to the point where I think it's cute, unlike some characters I know. I guess I was being presumptuous due to what she reminded me of at first, and it wasn't just her in that case. When I moved past that, I think she came off as charming and respectable. She runs her own business at such a young age. I love seeing her bond with Benny and Lincoln, just to name a few examples. The puns are clever enough here and there, and overall, I think her mannerisms and her personality came off as genuinely adorable as time went on. Oh, well, most of the time. I don't mean to single out these two characters in particular, they're just the ones that I happened to bring up in the past. Yeah, the irony of characters reliant on tropes giving me a newfound appreciation for individuality is not lost on me. But honestly, my history with this show is a little more complicated than that. Back when I first started watching this around the time of its beginnings back in 2016, I was just a busy college student, and the only reason I even knew it existed was because Phantom Strider mentioned it in his top 10 cartoons at the time, who, as I've come to learn, recently quit YouTube for financial reasons. Oof, really sorry to hear that, my guy. Even though I did enjoy what was there at that point, I never got too attached to it by any means. Probably because college is a lot of work, and I was on a bit of a high with narrative-driven TV shows at the time. Skip to the present, and Mexican Nickelodeon reruns the show too much for its own good nowadays, so I figured I'd catch up on its... Wait, how many seasons? Oh damn, okay. Apparently they struck gold. Fair enough. As I watched it more and more in the background while working at my desk, I really grew fond of its characters and this franchise as a whole. Oh, well, most of them. The comic strip art style, the homely setting of Royal Woods, which for better or worse is nothing like what inspired it, and the connections the Loud family has with itself and their friends, they just feel very refreshing to a guy whose animation palette was basically just serialized story-driven shows. That alone just really made me appreciate the slice of life shenanigans. This world just feels like a small town where practically all the residents genuinely know each other and look out for one another, more or less. I don't know about you guys, but being from a small immediate family and a large traffic-ridden and unsanitary city in a third world country, I really appreciate the sense of community this cartoon gives. And some episodes really focus on that. It's like the Loud kids and their parents are an extension of what their mostly grounded world has to offer, in addition to their own personalities and struggles, which, under several circumstances, are a lot of fun, or can at least genuinely resonate with people, although that wasn't even the case for the parents at first. In that regard, I was kinda relieved when they ditched the whole Miss Bellum shtick of keeping their faces hidden. They both have charming personalities and they're great parents. Except when they're not, and, well, that's part of why this video exists. No, really, don't misconstrue my resonance with the show or my genuine praise. You read the title of the video. When you have second place for the most episodes out of any Nicktoon, there's no way it could possibly stay consistently good. And I wouldn't be the first person to say that it hasn't. I wasn't kidding when I said its reputation was in the toilet in my Amphibia review, and, well, I've made a lot of observations in that regard. There's plenty of plot holes, inconsistencies, boring or contrived premises, bad executions, terrible messaging, mean-spirited and thoughtless writing, cheapened moments, gross out humor, and most notably in my opinion, character derailment. Sometimes it feels like this franchise doesn't know what it wants, so they just throw things at the wall to see what sticks. One moment, Lincoln is the biggest A-savvy fan out there. The next, that's completely disregarded in favor of discount James Bond?
Okay.
Or just as bizarrely, their most recent Halloween special and their only other 1 hour special is a Star Trek homage with actual aliens? Am I reading the right script? And that's not even covering the horrors of the fandom. I'm not even sure where to start without being too graphic. Cringy, embarrassingly long, and uninspired fanfictions, which is really saying something when fanfiction alone has enough of a stigma. The fanships are uncompelling, contrived, or just downright fucking disturbing. Well, except for one.
Oh, this is beautiful.
And more notably, in my opinion, too much of this fandom just lacks any real thought-provoking nuance. Maybe I'm not being fair by comparing it to the usual narrative-driven series I'm a fan of, and clearly this cartoon is meant for a much younger key demographic than what they have. But you'd think a Nicktoon that manages to keep up in popularity with an immortal juggernaut like SpongeBob would at least have some memes here and there, but you'd be wrong. Seriously, look up the Loud House on Twitter's search bar or go to its subreddit and you'll really have a grasp on how minimal genuine engagement or discussion is. Most of what I've seen is just happy anniversary to this episode without any additional context, bizarre fan comics that have little to nothing to do with the source material, and way too many OCs to count. I would give specific examples, but I'm not about to provoke any targeted harassment. In not so much of a contrast, you'll find a crapload of low-effort slop on DeviantArt, fanfiction.net, and that other website I'm not naming for a number of reasons. It's just really jarring that a series that won over so many audiences without the need for grandeur has managed to become so stale, and the fandom is no better in that regard. Judging from my observations, it really feels like this community fixates more on what the characters are, rather than who they are. Hopefully you know what I mean as this video goes on. I've more or less tried to narrow it down to 8 episodes that can sum up pretty much everything wrong with this series. If there's an episode you think should be on this listing, I'd probably consider it mediocre or forgettable at best. But by all means, don't be afraid to let me know what you had in mind in the comments. What, did you think I was going to review every single episode and put them in a ranking like everyone else?
I'm not a masochist.
Buddy, it's 8 seasons. Not all of it has aired in my country, I value my time, and I'm not holding on to my pessimism for that long. So, let's take a gander, shall we? This is the absolute worst of the Loud House. Believe me when I say that this entry came really close to not making this list, and I really thought about it thoroughly. Someone's bound to foolishly misinterpret some of what I'll say in this video as homophobia, but if there's one thing I strive to be in my videos when I have to be, it's impartial. So with that being said, I have a lot to say about L is for Love. Some kind of backlash to this choice really wouldn't surprise me, so if you're tempted to leave a dislike, at least hear me out. This episode is really not bad on paper, and there's a few reasons why it's at the bottom of the list at best. The premise is engaging, it has a great message, the pacing is decent, and we learn how the Loud parents met. Hell, if it weren't for its problems, this episode might have made the best episodes list. But let me summarize before I get into it. The Loud kids find a love letter addressed to one of them with the first name kept hidden through an initial. And since they all share the same initials, they gotta narrow down to who it's for, and they're each all hoping it's for them. But it turned out to be just a gesture of affection between their parents, which in turn encourages them to try the same thing with their crushes. It all seems pretty normal and healthy, but then every time we get to Luna during this process, things just got really dumb the more I thought about it. Hear me out. Every time she talks about this supposed guy named Sam, she's talking with all these insecurities or doubts that when you think about it, don't add up, and more importantly, don't match her character at all. Just watch the first instance to start.
That's because I didn't give one. The more I thought about it, the more I realized Sam's way out of my league, dudes.
I'm sorry, who's the band you're both in named after again?
Bogus, dude!
She's the frickin' bass player, honey. If anything, which it isn't the case either, you are out of her league. Oh, Sam's a girl, by the way. We'll get to that. Hold on. You mean to tell me that out of all the Loud siblings you could have chosen to have romantic insecurities out of any kind, you went with the laid-back, kind-hearted, cheerful, encouraging, and aspiring rock star teeming with confidence?
No, that's some pure deep bullshit.
Why would they choose her when they already did this with a character that's actually qualified? When it happened to Lucy, her reluctance made sense. She doesn't regret being a goth, but she knows she has a history of coming off as frightening. Even though she's unapologetically skilled at it, like in the Halloween special, she tends to scare people off even when she's not trying. So it makes sense for her to go out of her way to try to ditch her demeanor and change her appearance with someone who's seemingly too different from that. To the point where even all of her sisters encourage it at first. Here, it doesn't add up at all. Every time the episode focuses on Luna, she's just bearing this phony sense of self-doubt that really seems more tacked on as time goes on. And I'm really trying to grasp what the writers were going for here because not one narrative choice here made any sense. It's like telling Mabel Pines to love herself after all her failed romances. Like, have you met this girl? She's the embodiment of love yourself. Or Celica, trusting a blatantly corrupt zealot from the religion that antagonizes her own. Or Buzz Lightyear having no real sense of instinct. You get the gist. It's out of character, the resolution is redundant, or in this case, it's both. There is no genuine purpose to these circumstances. Let's go point by point and start with point 1. Trying to trick the audience into thinking Sam's a guy. Kind of a dead giveaway when you're keeping her in the center of the shot in the montage and Luna's looking right at her. Only halfway through the episode and you already wasted your red herring. Congratulations, you failed at basic storytelling. And even worse, the episode insists on itself that it's succeeding at it. Point 2. Luna's implausibly self-conscious behavior. As the episode goes on, it really contrasts significantly with the rest of the siblings' attitude. I gotta assume that this is supposed to be some sort of coming out of the closet character arc because otherwise it's even more awkwardly contrived. And, well, I hate to break it to you guys, but that doesn't add up either. If this really would have provoked any conflict within the Loud family to say the least, why would they have any genuine association with the McBrides to begin with? Their son has been Lincoln's best friend for how many years? More notably, a whole episode long before this one revolves around the idea of all 11 of them wanting to spend time with them, and their parents were unsurprisingly fine with it. Judging by the way the siblings responded while Luna was behaving like this, it's implied that they knew who Sam is anyways. Nothing in her upbringing, environment, circumstances, or the canon remotely suggests that she had anything to organically feel secretive or insecure about. On the contrary. So why is the writing trying to enforce something that's unauthentic in every conceivable way?
Attention!
This kind of plot element was already a cliche, even in 2017, and even more of a cliche is tomboys getting stereotyped on this subject. All things considered, it's really obnoxious how the narrative pretends that this plot device is even remotely unpredictable, when in reality, it's way too predictable from every angle.
And by unexpected, I mean completely expected!
It's like the narrative is trying to justify the lousy subtlety and the inconsistencies with these cliches, and it all really drags down an otherwise engaging episode. All while its otherwise decent message is emphasized and revolves around a character completely unqualified for it. Surprisingly though, that's not exactly the biggest issue with it. Honestly, this whole episode wouldn't bother me as much if Luna didn't already have an established and truly endearing personality. I pretty much already described who she is, and I really do dig it, but on top of all that, and out of all of Lincoln's sisters, she's always come off as the one who's most level-headed compared to the rest of them, at least when the plot doesn't demand otherwise. And arguably the most thoughtful and kind after Lenny. That's not even counting her development in episodes after this one, which now that I think about it, retroactively make this episode even worse. Maybe if Sam was remotely implied to or actually deserved the credit for bringing any of that development out through her own character, which there really isn't much of, mind you, this would be a completely different story. She sure as hell doesn't, but it's worth mentioning. In her best episodes, she's a great exemplification of the risks, consequences, and sacrifices of pursuing an artistic career. Something that as a former film student, I can resonate with to a certain degree. She passed up a gig on national TV because they wanted to completely dismantle her style and by extension who she is. Imagine that. She took different jobs fearing that she might not do well enough doing what she wants. Oof, been there, girl. And she's felt the need to make compromises for the sake of her career, like leaving her band to go on tour as an understudy or trying to avoid performing with her dad publicly for the sake of her image. Not that she was particularly ashamed of him or values the latter too much, but rather because in any real big-name artistic industry, if you're seen with the wrong crowd, so to speak, it might just screw over your real chances for work in it. Yo, am I watching the right Nick show? This is almost Avatar levels of character depth. Almost. I really do vibe with Luna's character significantly, and I think she's incredibly respectable in that regard nonetheless. She has more than enough issues to be genuinely doubtful about that actually match her character. Oh, by the way, quoting my favorite Aerosmith song is not gonna sell me on this facade.
Dream on, Loons.
That sounds like a reach with how common the saying is, but no. Apparently Luna quoting iconic songs in her dialogue was a running gag.
Those are about to rock. Carry on, my wayward sons. Dudes, I'm hungry like the wolf.
All the more reason I really dig this character, man. Honestly, the fact that she uses Dream On here specifically makes this character derailment feel personal. It's just really disheartening to see Luna behave in a way that doesn't match her at all, especially since it's implied that they started dating basically right after the letter. Yeah, as if Luna's sense of insecurity wasn't disingenuous enough, it was all for nothing. Not that I was condoning it in the first place, but what's the point of butchering your character if it amounted to nothing different anyways?
Attention!
At least some good romance resulted from this episode. No, really. Luann and Betty's coupling actually has believable pacing with true-to-life ups and downs. And it's not like Betty's a bland popular knockoff or anything generic by any means. Which is something I can't really say for Sam, but we'll get to that later. Just from his tone and mannerisms alone, you can tell he's relatively mindful and reserved, but still passionate about theater and also ventriloquism, as we come to learn later. The whole episode where they got together is great in of itself, and later episodes do flesh them both out in fun and compelling ways. Which is something I can't say for Sam in particular. Honest to God, 6 seasons later, and this girl has the least amount of personality out of any character in this entire series. And in a cast this big, that's really saying something. Hell, remember the red herring? That guy showed more personality in 11 minutes than she has in the span of 6 seasons. That's not a personality, you just drew random talents out of a hat and called it a day. All we basically know about her that's worth mentioning is that she likes rock and roll, which doesn't mean much when it's a given, and that she's good at dealing with animals. We don't really know how or why, like with Lana or Liam, she just somehow is. Great, this character wasn't uncompelling enough, so let's add Mary Sue elements to the mix. Girl, you're not Snow White. If it weren't for her little brother, you could practically switch her in with Lana in this one episode, and it wouldn't make a difference in the outcome. No, really. Nothing implies that the cat lullaby had to be a duet, and more importantly, it was Luna's idea anyways.
It was your idea to sing them a super sweet lullaby.
Maybe she finally could have had some development when she disguised herself as a bad influence friend to help Luna get back at her siblings for reading her diary, but she really didn't contribute to the idea in any meaningful way. Was the disguise or any of the vandalism written in the diary Sam's idea?
I don't know.
She basically just goes, "Oh, it was me, by the way." And that's her only line and her only actual appearance in the whole episode. Yeah, the writing in the diary was all a ruse, so nothing she did as Roxy ever really happened. Unsurprisingly, Luna's character shines through, showing that while she's rowdy and ambitious, she's not a heartless troublemaker as some would expect. While Sam showed essentially nothing. Again, the character that's been hardly more than a baseless plot device after 2 seasons at this point is still just a baseless plot device. This disguise really could have easily been one of Luna's other bandmates or even one of her sisters, and nothing would change. Actually, now that I think about it, if it was Lori of all people, it might have enhanced the episode instead. Who better to help Luna teach her siblings about respecting her privacy and space than the sibling who's arguably had the least amount of it? Heck, there's a whole episode that more or less emphasizes that. And that's built upon even further later. Screw that though, the girlfriends need the PR, am I right? How is Allison Stoner's character coming off as more of a puppet replica than when she actually played a puppet replica?
Ouch.
How is it that 6 seasons later, not one moment of this girl reflects any real individuality or genuine importance to Luna? And when it's tried, it's arbitrary, forced as hell, or both? Who else can tell Lori that she's the best thing that ever happened to him after a series of failed romantic gestures and actually mean it? Who else can help Luann realize that her playful tendencies are too much for their workplace and fire her with a sense of mercy? Who else can play a boombox outside of Lenny's window because he knows she loves the idea of hearing the music in question constantly? For how little screen time Gavin has had, even he's got this down. What has Sam been to or done for Luna that no one else can? Her partner in the scavenger hunt? Could have just as easily been the sister she shares a room with. Someone Luna kisses on the cheek out of gratitude. I can think of at least 12 alternatives. Her bandmate and bass player? You mean the one that replaced her? Technically twice? The one that can calm down a pair of cats she's babysitting. Again, Lana says hi. The one that gets upset that her partner is absent for most of a dance? Yeah, no kidding, Sherlock. Anyone would hate that. Sam has never held a position with Luna where it can only be her. And if that's the case, how is she any different than the most basic of friends to her when you can hardly even call her that as well? But I'm supposed to believe that they're meant to be together basically for good?
Bullshit.
And this is the most popular canon couple this show has? Wow, I wonder why. I'm not going to pretend that every character in this cartoon is particularly complex, but most of the ones that are kept relevant do give us a good enough grasp on who they are soon enough. Sam fails at that even though she's had more than enough episodes, comic segments, yeah, those really didn't build much character either, 3 blatant comparisons that actually succeed in a similar position, and a lot of shallow positive reception up her sleeve, for reasons you probably already guessed. It's not like you needed a lot of screen time to pull this off either. Just look at Benny. Through his body language, his voice work, circumstances, and the tone of the character, He shows that he's kind, slightly timid, and genuinely playful. No pun intended. But he can still be mindful and passionate, like I said. However, he can be reserved and respectful, almost to a fault. When he and Luann are cast as Romeo and Juliet, she gets too nervous about the big kiss because she's never kissed anyone and she doesn't want to do it disingenuously anyways. While he ends up quitting the play because he thinks she doesn't want to kiss him at all when she keeps trying to avoid it in the rehearsals for the aforementioned reasons. We as the audience understand how they're feeling and why they're feeling the way they do. There's actual development for both of them through a romance through a dedicated episode before they even started dating and in just one.
Wow.
Boy, you know you got it good when even someone as analytical as Cartoonchi was rooting for you. Outside of when Sam's playing guitar, and that's putting it generously, she's basically just a rehash of Luna without any of the depth, charm, relatability, charisma, or energy. Kinda like the live action Luna the more I think about it. Wow, she's really not beating those replica allegations. And you might be wondering, what happened between Sam and Luna after the letter and before the first date?
My source is that I made it the fuck up.
Nobody really knows, we're just expected to assume the best. And I would take that mystery in stride since they were implied to be close friends, unlike Luann and Benny. But the plot of their first date is that they don't know anything about each other? What?! Let me get this straight. Luna Loud, the extroverted, confident, aspiring rock star that encouraged her brother to kiss a girl, twice, the second of which she took the initiative single-handedly, the sister that jumps into crowds, banking on them catching her, thinks her close friend is out of her league and is insecure about merely asking her out, let alone doesn't believe at all that it could be the other way around? Secondly, the girl that is so thoughtful she strives to make first concerts unforgettable for all of her family members, makes up for how overbearing she was in the process, almost immediately after realizing that, organized a private concert with her brother's favorite band to compensate for costing him his ticket, and is trusted to buy him exactly what he wants for Christmas without complications, unlike the rest of his sisters, mind you. You're telling me that gal didn't know anything or put any real thought into her closest friend before she became more than that?
Well, you got me. By all accounts, it doesn't make sense.
This isn't a character. This is another stereotypical, self-flattering fanfiction OC. As if this fandom didn't have enough of those. Except this one snuck its way into the official series. Who is this girl? Oh, she's Luna's closest friend. Even though Luna really knows nothing about her. What's that? She's so lacking in personality that there's nothing to learn anyways?
Oh yeah, like that's any better.
Oh, also, Luna's gay now and is totally attracted to her. Oh, by the way, Luna thinks this girl is too cool for her even though it's legitimately the other way around. You see how ridiculous it all sounds? But sure, Nick, go ahead and insult your audience's intelligence by insisting on all of this, while consequently derailing an otherwise beloved character over and over again for its sake. Whatever it takes for your brownie points, am I right? Either these writers did not think this through, this pairing is so trash it's a complete disservice to Luna's character, or both.
Both? Both is good.
And even more plausibly, please don't make me say it. You already implied it. Do I have to say it? You know it's true. Okay, here goes. The showrunners were too caught up in the fact that one of their leads would be in a same-sex couple to give a real damn about the relationship in question.
Why you boring me? I'm right.
6 seasons, several comic iterations, so much time, comparisons, and opportunity later, and sadly, I'm convinced that really is the case. There is so much emptiness, it makes me think there were ulterior motives with this pairing because it's not the first time I've seen this sort of pattern in professional screenwriting. Just ask Rosa Diaz from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. She suspects her boyfriend of cheating, gets mad when she thinks she's confirmed it, but she turns out to be painfully mistaken, which for a professional detective is especially absurd, even for a comedy. He was just going the extra mile and learning Spanish for her sake, and the mistress in question was just a teacher. What did this misunderstanding amount to? Oh, she dumps him in the same episode anyways and comes out as bisexual later.
You serious?
I really don't mean to undermine the concept, but when it happens this late into a show's runtime, and someone's already shown interest in the opposite sex, this is a blatant conflict of interest on the showrunner's end. It's like they're thinking, yeah, we want to make him gay now. There's already evidence to the contrary, it consequently undermines any character progression, at least in these instances. But screw it, the publicity's a goldmine. Yeah, forget the perfectly respectable dads, am I right? That's not good enough, it has to be one of our leads at all costs. It's like going to a stranger's funeral for free food. Nobody should trust that you're there for the right reasons. Why am I mentioning all this? Well, in Luna's case, she was already shown to fall for guys not that long before they introduced Sam. And in Rose's case, well, the answer's a lot more obvious there. Yeah, screw Pimento and screw their hilariously endearing romantic chemistry. Beatrice is bi, so Rosa has to date women now. There is simply no authenticity in these choices for these characters. Don't take my word for it though. Comments and videos involving them agree that even then, there was no real reason for them to break up. Not even for the sake of this. Well, that and her next partner was an asshole, but that's besides the point. As far as high-budget fiction is concerned, I can't trust that these choices are being made for the right reasons. Assuming they were even narratively appropriate in the first place. Why do you think corporations tend to get ridiculed for their branding during Pride Month? We all know they're just doing it for an unprincipled grasp at attention, and in some cases with a sense of hypocrisy. Yeah, even you, Nickelodeon, you ain't slick. It's really telling when even to this day, Luna's best episodes are the ones where Sam's involvement is minimal, or she's completely absent altogether. Which is in itself another issue. I know the series' timeline is kind of inconsistent, but it seems like the plan was to keep Luna and Sam as a couple at all costs. So why is she completely absent from really loud music of all places? It's a half-hour special revolving around Luna's character development and her career. It's the biggest milestone of the latter yet. She's on national TV, but the one person outside of her family who should be supporting her is nowhere to be found? Wouldn't this special be a prominent but still humble opportunity to so much as acknowledge her respectfully? Could have put her in the audience jamming with the louds, or even just shown her watching the TV and saying, "Woo, go Luna!" Any contribution like that with a little more detail would have done. I doubt it really would have fleshed out her character by any means, because clearly that's a lot to ask for, but it would have been a well-timed and meaningful moment to start with. Too little too late if they try anything now. As if Ellis for Love alone didn't have enough issues, it's like everything that went wrong with it just provokes more issues later in a really messy snowball effect. I'm sorry, I really gave these two a fair chance, and I know how what I'm about to say might make me look, but this relationship is a complete sham. It's so detrimental, bland, derivative, disingenuous, soulless, and so forced. There's absolutely no substance to it, and all things considered, it feels like every time Luna shows affection towards her, she's thinking, "Oh, right. I gotta remind the audience she's my girlfriend, love." The only time I felt any real emotional investment out of these two interacting, and I'm not saying it out of relief, is when they're considering breaking up because of most of what I just mentioned. They have little to nothing in common, they indirectly screw each other over, especially against Luna, and most importantly, they never learned anything about each other despite their contrived but pre-established friendship.
Thank you!
Considering how bland and pointless Sam's character is, this really doesn't surprise me. Narratively, it would have been clever and appropriate to own up to the bad writing, patch up a good chunk of the plot holes and derailment caused by this character's mere existence, and have them go back to being just friends, even if that term hardly applied. Right? Of course they don't go through with it, and the narrative acts like there weren't any real problems. They mess around while baking a pie, and suddenly everything is hunky-dory. It's so forced, I feel like Vader himself is choking me. What do you mean baking is, and I quote, not your thing? Everything you need, including the recipe, is right in front of you. What, is basic literacy not your thing either? Instead of owning up to the inconsistencies like they were alluding, the writers just made even more and doubled down on it. And then Luna says that maybe they can find out what they do have in common. Eventually.
Well, we're waiting.
Yeah, to this day, they've done nothing together that actually reflects that. And sure, that was totally the biggest issue anyways. Not the fact that consequently neither of them ever knew a damn thing about their closest friend before they started going out with each other. I know damn well that is not Luna Loud. But through Sam's character, or lack thereof, I really don't know on her end. Seriously, this character is so empty that when she made a cameo in the movie, she may as well be wearing a t-shirt that says, "I'm Luna's girlfriend." Because one, that's her only appearance, with no speaking lines, mind you. And two, that's all she's not even good for. I would give credit for basically doing what I suggested here, but one, these are almost 3 years apart in release. Sam's empty character already shoehorned her way into the series for me to care. In layman's terms, too little too late. Two, the latter doesn't revolve around Luna. Thirdly, and again, I don't trust that they're doing this because they care about the relationship, and even less the characters. Especially Netflix of all companies. Case in point, where are the other partners in that montage? Bobby I get, he lives 3 hours away, and he appears later in the movie anyways, but where's Benny? Should I be surprised at this point?
No.
He's not the only one getting screwed over like this, though. Look at the live-action version. The Moon Goats, their other bandmates, their music club, and pretty much everything that brought Luna and Sam together. It's all gone here. Like it never existed here for some reason. In fact, Luna has a strict solo career in this one. But somehow and some way, Sam is still around right from the first episode, and they're still dating like nothing happened? Because, well, nothing really did? This version officially ended, by the way, so there's no means to rectify that.
Meanwhile,
Bobby, his family's business, his long-term relationship with Lori, it's all there. So where's his sister and Lincoln's dear friend, partially in credit to said relationship? Yep, not so much as a cameo or even a mention of Ronnie Ann. Even with her presence being heavily supported by canon, Lincoln's beloved friend and their first choice to lead a spin-off, for whatever that was worth, is nowhere to be found. While the character that lacks every in-story reason to exist is present from the beginning. Yeah, a character so important, she only has 2 minor appearances, and all of her mentions that lack even that are literally just reminders that she exists. Well, it could be worse for Ronnie Ann. She could have her screen time irrationally cut short like Stella's. No, really, for the amount of time we see Lincoln's friend group, she is inexplicably absent in most of them. The sleepover I get, but every other time? This all just circles back to my point at the beginning of the video, and what I trust is the biggest problem with both the showrunners and its fans. Most of them care so much more about what these characters are, rather than who they are. To anyone watching, be they someone involved in this series, or more than likely just a fan of this show, let me ask you a set of rhetorical questions. Why do you think there's so much fan art, and probably even the most out of all the canon couples in this show, of these two, even though in said canon, their bond is as bland as rocks? No pun intended either. Why are they the only couple getting a dedicated comic iteration with just them on the cover? It's not because Sam was ever that interesting as a character, or really much of a character at all, I can tell you that much. Why do people give these girls any credit for behaving like a normal couple? If by normal you mean so generic and reductive it's uncompelling, then I would agree. Why does Luna talk and act like she's really into her when, even to this day, there's virtually nothing to be into? Basically just a worse version of herself in every way. Why do I see Sam frame 1 when I Google Luna's name, but Bobby and Benny are nowhere in sight for Lori and Luann respectively? And lastly, I mainly ask the fans of this show and alike, why is this the most popular canon couple in the show when it is unquestionably the worst one? If all you can tell yourself is that it's for the shallow, self-righteous, unsubstantive, attention-starved, clout-chasing, pretentious, and downright cliche concept of representation in media, then I have nothing more to say to you. At first, I could see why this episode was highly rated, but now I know it's partially, if not primarily, for the wrong reasons, and I think there's a bigger picture to see here. I might be alone in this, but I'm genuinely sick of networks insisting on this shallow grasp at attention and sugarcoating it as representation. As a native Mexican, no soy ajeno al despojo vacío de esta franquicia. Just look at the beta opening for the Casa Grandes and you'll see where the creators' priorities lie. I can't remember some of their names for the life of me, and some of them don't even have a confirmed first name because they're that underutilized. But hey, at least I know she's Nicaraguan.
Bruh.
I will give credit though. This theme song's a lot better than what we actually got.
Yo, yo, yo! Ah!
We move from Royal Woods up to the city by the Great Lake. In the Mercado life is
Oh, and fun fact, Ronnie Ann was originally supposed to be a Caucasian redhead. I'm not saying white-skinned Latina redheads don't exist, but I think we know well the showrunners didn't even consider that. And for the record, I really don't have anything against Ronnie Ann or her character. Kind of the opposite, actually. However, if this staff had different priorities, then maybe they would have lasted more than 3 seasons. If your viewership numbers didn't pale so much in comparison to the source, then what does that tell you? And after sitting through it all, this show was mostly at its best when it focused more on the people involved rather than the basic and stereotypical implications of their ethnicities. Not all Mexican mothers use a chancla, Nickelodeon. That goes for you too, Pixar. And frankly, this idea only ever made me laugh once.
I'm moving out.
If the Casa Grandes had at least maybe built an artistic style out of the concepts, like say, El Tigre or the Book of Life. Oh hey, what's good, my dude? Yeah, don't think I didn't recognize that music.
La tormenta has taken down Tlaloca!
Wait a minute. You had Jorge R. Gutierrez involved in this show and y'all still fumbled it? I digress. Maybe we'd actually have something more than just the Loud House with a Mexican paint job and a much less interesting family. Nobody asked for you, you don't work off of your strengths, you fail competitively, and everyone remembers the alternative more. Felicidades, you're the Mega Mewtwo X of Nickelodeon. Not necessarily the alternative of the Loud House itself in this metaphor, but rather I'd say the character of Ronnie Ann. You know, the lead of the show. With how often she's absent, you'd think the writers forgot about her. I'm not sure what the general consensus is, but I really do like Ronnie Ann as a character, and I really wasn't keen on it at first. I'm not fond of the idea of the love interest starting off as a bully to the protagonist, regardless of how much sympathy she earns in other aspects. Here though, it was great to see her grow out of her ways as this reserved tough girl who only shows her kindness with her family, and watching her be genuinely open with it thanks to her bond with Lincoln and the rest of her relatives, eventually resulting in her friendship with Sid to start. I get where some people are coming from, but I don't think it's fair to describe what her character has become as just a female Lincoln when she's learned a lot of good through him. Hell, just as a fun example, who do you think taught her to break the fourth wall? I kinda wish that was done more than once though. I really would have liked to have seen how she continues to grow through her own friend group, her interactions with her family, and in some cases still through Lincoln. Like say, her being excited about spending a day with her mom after she finally got a day off work, and later realizing that she should go out of her way to help her give her some rest instead, which resulted in her getting to spend time with her anyways. Or when she and her best friend realized that they'd rather be in the same school club together rather than the ones they thrive at. Or her taking the initiative to form a skating team at her school despite the complications. Or when she didn't think less of a friend who didn't want to host a movie night out of shame for his residents. Or, more notably, when her pranking habits against Lincoln grew into a playfully mutual competition. Or most notably, when she realized she's perfectly happy as Lincoln's friend and was horrified at the prospect of him falling in love with her. And as it turns out, the feeling has been essentially mutual.
Oh no!
It's perfectly possible for these characters to appeal abstractly to audiences, and in my case, her being Mexicana had nothing to do with it. Screw that though. Quinceañeras, abuelas selling tacos, melodramatic telenovelas, and disguising the family as even bigger Mexican stereotypes. That's where the real content is. Oh, that last one's not a generalization. That's what actually happens in an episode. As far as the dumpster fire that is Saluna is concerned, it's not going to be the first time this franchise will botch or neglect a romantic pairing because clearly the showrunners had other priorities. Sometimes they just don't follow up on what's set up at all, even poorly in that case. Or they'll abandon it altogether for no good reason, just as Clyde and Chloe.
Who?
Exactly.
I wanted to tell you that your dance proposal was really sweet. It must have taken so much courage to put yourself out there like that. Oh, thanks.
A few moments later.
Chloe, wait! I know the dance is almost over, but would you like to dance with me?
Yeah, that sounds fun.
After you!
Aww, that's so sweet. They're together at a Valentine's dance, Clyde got to dance with a girl. Even if she wasn't the one he had initially hoped for, she genuinely admires his courage from that endeavor anyways. And all things considered, they seem really happy together. You have to wonder what this will mean for Clyde in the future. Maybe they'll bond over that baking show they both love. Maybe that'll inspire her to join him and his nana in baking. Heck, they already turned that talent into a business. And it's gonna be interesting to see her interact with Lincoln and the rest of the... We never see them together again, do we?
Oh, come on!
As much as I'd love to keep venting these frustrations, guys, I think I said enough for just the first entry. Good God, how long will this video be? I really didn't mean to read this much into this pairing, but I was genuinely surprised with the overwhelming amount of evidence I found against them. But hey, I'm covering the absolute worst in this show, and practically everything involving her applies for one reason or another. It's not just the problems of this episode alone that really make me dislike it overall. It's everything it resulted in. A colossal domino effect of bad character development, or lack thereof, tokenizations, empty favoritism, attention-starved pandering, shallow positive reception, wasted potential, blatant character derailment, lack of continuity, plot holes, dear God, the list goes on.
Write that down, write that down!
Since most of that isn't in the episode in question directly, or even built up to it, I thought putting it at the lowest ranking was the least I should do. I don't take pleasure in saying this, but even Luna admitted to this herself. She and Sam were better off as just friends. Maybe not even that, since in reality, the narrative, much like its writers, reflects how little they care about each other. It's almost as if Sam was never meant to be a real character and was only created for attention. Yeah, I said it. I know Luna's better than this, but Sam's personality is so pretentiously empty, I legitimately have no clue. If there's any romance that deserved to be scrapped right after being introduced, it's the one with this bozo. In conclusion, Samantha Sharp, you give love a bad name.
Is this your game? Huh?
Kings of the Con. When your half-hour special is so bad, it probably made the writers never mention Ace Savvy ever again. No, really, it's season 4, and this is the last time it was ever a subject. Do I think that was necessary, even with how bad this episode is? No way, there is plenty of great episodes that involve it. Like I said, seeing what sticks on the wall. Even though usually this did stick. But anyways, on to the episode. If there's one thing season 4 of an otherwise amazing series like Community taught me, the notoriously worst season, mind you, it's that having an episode at a convention based around media a character likes usually doesn't go well, narratively and critically. And with The Loud House, it's no different. Which is a shame because the beginning and several elements really emphasize great things like the endearing bond between Lincoln and his sisters, and also his bond with Clyde in this case. TLDR, the boys are going to an Ace Savvy convention, and the cosplayers that leave the biggest impression win a cameo in an upcoming movie. With this knowledge, the boys convince the sisters to cosplay the characters they inspired from that fan-made comic contest that he won a while back. Just like that. Boom. Continuity. Already doing what Alice for Love couldn't. Don't get carried away though, there's a reason why it's higher on this list. Seeing Lincoln bond with his sisters over Ace Savvy of all things is pretty refreshing considering that normally they wouldn't even humor the idea. But then things start going wrong. I get the fact that Lincoln starts getting outshined by his sisters to the point where the judges favor them while leaving him and Clyde out. But did y'all have to make them accidentally and coincidentally tick off the judges in one way or another? There's only so many times I can tell myself it's a cartoon and let the dumb luck slide, but that usually only applies when I'm laughing or something just as good came out of it. Yeah, the series has decent slapstick sometimes, but it's no Tom and Jerry by any means. Here, I just feel bad. Every time they ticked off the judges, they were all obvious accidents, but somehow that wasn't understood. And in an episode twice as long as most, it really drags on. Even if I go with what it leads up to, it's not the first time Lincoln has sacrificed something involving this franchise to protect his sisters. Or in this case, just make them happy. If I have any real faith in his love for them, he probably would have behaved supportingly and that's that. As if what amounted to this wasn't contrived in the first place. It gets so forced to the point where Lincoln and Clyde fabricate a crime and release a dangerously trained animal just to look good, even at their sister's expense? We are 4 seasons in. I think we are definitely at a point where Lincoln would not be selfish enough to sabotage his sister's opportunities like this. Not to mention be so stupid in the process. He's already got a reputation for supporting his sisters in their endeavors. This should be no different. Honestly, this sort of realization coming to him probably would have made for a better resolution than what we got. But that being said, what we actually got is too underwhelming and too corny even by these cartoon standards. At least he learns his lesson by the end, but it feels uncomfortably redundant. He had already grasped the idea of not reaching for fame at other people's expense 3 seasons ago! And like I said, he's already made Ace Savvy related sacrifices to protect his sisters in the past. Yeah, on that note, who knows what kind of opportunities he missed out on that other Ace convention he passed up to protect Lucy. At least this episode is less consequential than Alice for Love, but the missteps are a lot more apparent. And there's no real payoff because almost 5 seasons later, we still haven't seen that movie cameo the girls won. It's not that it feels like the writers presumably didn't realize the lack of consistency in this episode, it's that they forgot to care from the start, and it consequently undermines Lincoln's fundamental love for his sisters. That alone is enough to make this list.
Don't mess with the bull, young man, you'll get the horns.
Sitting Bull. It's bad enough when mischaracterizations are pushed in the show, but when they're flanderized and it's treated like it's a good thing, that's just as bad, if not worse. It's like that one Family Guy episode where Peter gets legally classified as mentally... Well, I can't use the term they did without getting demonetized. And again, I can't get monetized in general without 1,000 subs, so now's as good a time to remind you guys to like and subscribe. Anywho, he abuses a notion, accidentally gets his wife hospitalized in the process, and loses custody of his kids. Only for none of that to mean anything and get everything back by the end of the episode. Or in the Owl House, when Luz brought a pack of snakes to school for a book report because she thought it'd be funny. Only for the plot and its conclusion to basically bail her out of the consequences while implying she did nothing wrong. Because for some reason this show thinks just being quirky guarantees sympathy. Oh, but she's just misunderstood. My brother in Christ, for all we know, she killed her classmate. Yeah, a snake bite to the brain is not something to gloss over. Long story short, Lynn starts babysitting like the rest of the older sisters, and it goes about as well as you would expect. With how abrasive she usually is, it doesn't exactly appeal to people paying you to look out for their children. Lynn grosses them out during their bedtime stories, forces hard workouts, makes them eat raw eggs, and basically puts them through things that no child at their ages ethically should have to go through. Unsurprisingly, the sisters fire her, but she's too stubborn to accept that her methods are too much and she's making things worse. She takes clients meant for her sisters behind their backs and turns these kids' afternoons into a trial and error horror show. Oh, it doesn't stop there. She costs the family most of their babysitting clients and she still doesn't get a clue. Guys, Just because she's stubborn doesn't mean she's an idiot. Even then, usually one anecdote is enough for her to... You know what? That's a discussion for later. This is all bad enough, but the messaging is the real issue. The older sisters trick Lynn into thinking she was right, which she sure as hell isn't, but go on, and they convince her into babysitting a group of quintuplets notorious for tormenting babysitters just to humble her. Which, yeah, it's kind of a dick move, but surely they deduce that if anyone can keep up with them, it's her, right? Of course not. Oh, but it gets even worse. The sisters apologize to Lynn for setting her up like this, and get this, they act like they were in the wrong the whole time.
I beg your pardon?
She destroyed your business and mistreated children, but somehow she's the victim? And after all that, she somehow got all the clients back. How freaking convenient. What, did she threaten them over the phone? Because with the way this plot carries itself, I believe it. More so because we never learn how that conversation went down. She just says it took a lot of convincing, and that's that. This episode is so ethically inaccurate, and it condones the problems, while pretending that they were plausibly solved anyways. We all have vulnerabilities, and Lynn's are apparent, and maybe there's a time where they do come to our advantage, but this plot just falters at every step of that idea. She left children scarred and ruined a business, but screw it. She really was onto something, I guess.
Let's go gambling! Aw, dang it. Aw, dang it.
It is morally reprehensible. Lynn shows no real growth as a character, and she conveniently escapes the consequences of her mistakes, cause we gotta wrap this shit up soon enough, like a speech at the Game Awards.
Nothing but lies. Lies! 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 Lies!
House of Lies. You know how I said at least Ellis for Love had a decent message? Even if it was emphasized by a completely unqualified character. This one is just bad, and not to be too on the nose, but it's dishonest. To summarize, Lisa gets fed up with the fact that everyone in the house keeps lying to each other for one shallow reason or another, so she builds a pair of lie detecting glasses. For example, Lori tells Lana that she can't give her a ride to a dumpster, only for her to start the car and go to the mall as soon as Lana's not looking. Either she was being lazy, she had selfish priorities, or both, and well, neither made any real sense anyways. Could she just not drive her to the dumpster on her way to the mall? Or tell her that she already has plans? None of that is implied, she just tells her that she has homework and doesn't mention any of that to Lisa when she asks for an explanation, which makes the lying even worse, and Lori has the gall to tell her that it's a little white lie. As if that wasn't forced enough, this crap continues with pretty much every other character in the family in some way. Lenny dyes her hair orange and nobody wants to tell her how bad it looks. Never mind that. How would the thoughtful family fashionista not realize that it looks terrible? I'm no fashion expert myself, but even I know that it clashes with her outfit. Even she would probably say something like, orange is not my color. Another example, Lynn Sr. is cooking a dish no one likes for dinner and no one wants to tell him that it's bad or told him it was bad the first time. Yeah, Lynn Sr. The aspiring chef so talented he got promoted out of dishwasher in one try and won over a private investor with his frickin' leftovers. I have no reason to think that nobody in this family has the heart to tell him that this dish could be better. Especially his wife, or say even Lenny. The latter's usually dumb enough to blurt it out without thinking anyways. They trash the food when he's not looking and order takeout behind his back. Well, so much for the family's budget. It's not like you've ever shown that money is tight in this family of 13. Oh, wait. Even with how sensitive he is, he could probably improve the dish no problem. It wouldn't be the first time he salvaged something so disgustingly inedible. The solutions are so simple when you so much as respect the continuity of the series, but the plot insists that lies are a must. Honest question, do these writers watch their own show? Just from this episode alone, it really doesn't seem like it. Here's another example. Lisa catches Luann lying about stealing Luna's gong. Even without the lie detector, why did Luann deny it? Or better yet, why did she not just ask to borrow it? Could she not be trusted to keep it in one piece? Is she suddenly a kleptomaniac? No reasons mentioned either. The ambiguity of these motivations just make the lying seem even worse, as if it wasn't petty enough. The family gets so upset at the fact that they can't get away with lying to each other over all these minor things anymore, so they destroy the glasses when Lisa's not looking. To counter this, Lisa built a lie detector that covers the whole house. Is this family really so compulsively dishonest with itself that any consistent flow of truth makes them despise each other? The narrative really wants you to make you believe that, because that's what actually happens. Even the writing itself is trying to lie to you. It was bad enough when Ellis for Love horribly mischaracterized one person. This one mischaracterizes all 13 of them. Yeah, even Lily.
Not the baby!
Everyone gets so mad when they get caught lying to each other, they get mad at Lisa, and they claim that the lie detector, not even the whole system, just the glasses, is too extreme. and they have the audacity to try to justify it all.
Sweetie, I agree, but sometimes a little white lie helps smooth things over.
Smooth what over? Lori's laziness? Luann's supposed kleptomania? The one instance where it would actually be in character for Lenny to be self-aware? There's some accuracy in the idea that forcing the truth or saying it at the wrong time is a bad thing, but none of these circumstances presented in the episode reflect that. It's not like in The Good Place where they have to lie because they're undercover in the depths of hell. That's your family, you dumbasses! And the worst part is that by the end, Lisa caves in and helps destroy the detector, all while surrendering to the little white lies mantra. Because God forbid you guys be encouraged to be honest with each other when you have nothing to lose. They gotta gradually learn to be more honest and open with each other to the point where Lisa doesn't see the need for the detector anymore, making for great development for the family and discrediting every problem in this episode. But of course, it can't possibly be that nuanced. This episode turns everyone into idiots and the messaging is awful. You know what isn't a lie? This episode sucks and I wish more people realized that.
Free for all!
We're all in the family. Not the first time Lincoln got that short end of the stick for any of his sister's sakes. Like when he lied about liking Princess Pony to protect Lucy from getting teased. See, now that would be a little white lie. Or humiliating himself on camera to make up for the fact that he did the same thing to his sisters. Time and time again, Lincoln bites the bullet because he loves them, it was the right thing to do, or both. But in Brawl in the Family, he gets screwed over without deserving it, and worse, his sisters are to blame. Lori and Lenny get into a fight for incredibly stupid reasons, even by cartoon standards. And thus, the so-called sister fight protocol is in effect. Stay out of both girls' ways, regardless of where they go or what they need, until they decide to calm down and resolve it. Gotta go to the bathroom, Lincoln? Too bad, Lenny's in there venting. Go poop in a bucket instead. No, really? Hungry for a snack in the kitchen? Nope. Off limits for some unexplained reason. How about you go settle for this bagel Lisa found on the couch? And for some reason, don't tell him what's wrong with it until he realizes by tasting it. What was even the point of that? Lori and Lenny need a divider in the room? Use Lincoln's blankets without even asking. I'm sure he won't mind. Dump some dirty laundry on him to make up for it. Okay, that's just cruel, and it makes even less sense than the bagel. Unsurprisingly, he starts getting fed up, and when he tries to question why he's at the mercy of their whims, the rest of the sisters shut him down and tell him that he wouldn't understand because, and I quote,
"It's a sister thing. You wouldn't understand."
Yeah, the guy with 10 sisters who's lived in that household his whole life couldn't possibly understand this protocol, let alone be more aware of it until now. Bobby knows, their parents know. In fact, they're so aware that they lock themselves in their room with Lily when the protocol kicks in. Yeah, real Parents of the Year material. Would it kill y'all to be responsible adults and make your borderline grown daughters actually deal with this? With this tension, you might be wondering what started all this. Oh, you know, the simple coincidence of buying the same dress and refusing to return it for the sake of the other's ego. Told you it was incredibly stupid. I'm not surprised that Lincoln made things worse by trying to spur the girls into making up, but I really don't blame him for trying. The whole household was basically being held hostage. He takes all the collateral damage over something he unreasonably was not made aware of, and what started all this was obnoxiously absurd and out of character to begin with. How is he supposed to stay out of their way when literally every sister is getting in his? Not one choice in this episode except for Lincoln's made any real sense, and somehow he's painted as the bad guy for it? He gets Lenny to switch rooms with another sister, only for all 10 of them to be divided over who is right. It gets so bad that they threaten to hurt him, and he feels like he has to run away from home and spend the rest of the day with Clyde. Bro, how awful are your parents that they can't even bother trying to help their daughters make up in some way? Are they seriously this unassertive and scared of their own children's tendencies that they lock themselves in their own room? No, the answer is no. It's not the first time Rita has assertively raised her voice at all 11 of them. Is this household so abusively dysfunctional that their own son has to run away from home while you cower in your damned room? By no means would any of this match any real sense of character, yet here we are. On that note, this is all happening over a conflict that doesn't even match who Lori and Lenny are at all. Seriously, in most episodes where they interact directly, these two girls really carry themselves like they're each other's best friends. They gossip, they read magazines together, they take selfies together, Lori keeps Lenny's stupidity in check, and they seem so happy to spend time together. Especially after Lori goes away to college. Yeah, they fought over clothes before because usually Lenny borrows them without asking, presumably out of her usual stupidity. For once she has her own copy and they're still fighting?
So I am Confucian.
Considering the way they typically treat each other, it'd be completely in character for them to genuinely laugh this whole issue off instead of this soulless sense of jealousy. All things considered, it's painfully forced to see anyone in this episode like this, and everything it amounted to is unpleasant in so many ways, especially the ending. Lincoln comes back home and all the sisters are hunky-dory again, and they have the nerve to give credit to the fact that he was gone. Yeah, that was the issue here. Not the bad parenting, not the exacerbations, not the house being held hostage, not the whole protocol coincidentally being processed at his expense. Just blame Lincoln for having the guts to so much as try a real way out of this mess. And it gets even worse. How did the conflict with the dress get solved? By taking advantage of Lenny's stupidity.
I came up with the perfect solution. Lori gets to wear it on the days that end in Y, and I get to wear it the rest of the time.
Its messaging is awful, the plot fails from the start, it's so mean-spirited, and after seeing enough episodes to grasp the bond between Lori and Lenny, even if most of those take place after this one, it is incredibly disheartening to so much of believe that they would ever carry themselves like this, let alone Lori abusing Lenny's naivety like this. It just really shows that the writers did not think about some of these characters' dynamics upon execution and beyond, and well, it wouldn't be the first time.
No! What? Sorry, force of habit.
Force of habits. I'm usually pretty invested in the romance in this show because they're usually endearing in several ways. Well, not all of them, I've made that clear. But more importantly, they reflect character growth for several of the Loud sisters and subsequently, a lack of stagnation for the franchise amidst the oversaturating amount of episodes in total. So imagine how bad it is when none of that genuine charm, growth, or continuity is achieved for 3 of these pairings. Okay, that one doesn't surprise me anymore, but still. It starts off fine. Lori's visiting from college, and she, Lenny, and Luna talk about their partner's bad habits. Gavin snorts when he laughs. Who? Yeah, this guy barely got introduced, give him a break. Bobby sings sporadically, even in public. Which, okay, he did once during a Christmas party, but it's still pretty forced. And Sam is annoyingly indecisive. As if I didn't diss her enough in this video, but at least she's not the only problem here. Eventually, the girls encourage their partners into trying to break their bad habits. Only for things to go wrong when the same is kindly applied to them. Lenny takes selfies too often, Lori can't stop saying literally even when it makes no sense, and Luna can't stop using every surface as a drum. Which, okay, most of that was never established before, but at least they feel genuine. You would think someone who's usually assertive but fair like Lori, someone kind-hearted and thoughtful like Lenny, or someone energetic but amiable like Luna would handle this easily, right?
No.
Somehow you'd be wrong. All 3 girls hypocritically lose their marbles when their habits are brought into question, and rather than addressing the blatant overreactions, somehow this leads to them to feel bad about ending their partner's bad habits. It's the same problem as Brawl in the Family. They're clearly exacerbating the situation, that alone is out of character in this context, and somehow, instead of addressing anything along those lines, the narrative jumps to a completely different and inappropriate solution. The sisters get so pent up with breaking their bad habits that they lash out at their partners and accuse them of trying to offend them through this practice. Rather than so much as thinking about the habits themselves, the sisters just talk like they were being too harsh and pretend that all 6 habits somehow made them who they are. That's not what this is about at all! Makes you my ass, it's just one disruptive habit. Bobby drew a lot of unwanted attention, Sam made time and money go to waste, Gavin at best grossed people out, but for all he and Lenny knew, he can't help it. Part of the problem is that they didn't really make it clear until the end. Why wouldn't someone as thoughtful as Lenny of all people not get that from the start? Let alone have him mention it. Yeah, she's dumb, but she puts thought into making people happy when it counts. There's a whole episode proving just that. This whole episode is just a giant clusterfuck of forced misunderstandings and mischaracterizations. The conflict really hinges on the sisters acting offended about having their bad habits questioned, as if that ever really made any sense. Why would they think they're being brought into question out of malice? It really seems like the only reason the girls are accepting of their bad habits by the end is because they can't healthily let go of their own. Then when they try to apologize, if you can even call it that, they start rambling about how they were wrong to be fixated on the negatives instead of addressing their overreactions. Yeah, they are straight up gaslighting their way out of accountability. I know enough about Lori and Bobby to not believe that on their end. At least that's been the case for a couple seasons. Lenny and Gavin's relationship barely even started, and even then, they're both too considerate. As for Luna and Sam, well, there's a crap ton of issues, but toxicity isn't really one of them. At least on Luna's end. Hey Luna, I'm so indecisive that I'll embarrass you in public and waste our time and money. And I'll use that wasted time to be even more indecisive. But please, don't try to change it, it's just who I am. You see how dumb it sounds in practice? Wow. I know I hold Sam in low regard, but I didn't think a lot of reasons for that would never be so apparent. As if Luna didn't have enough reason to dump this waste of a character, but I digress. Some habits were worth breaking and some weren't. There's no absolutism, yet that's exactly what they go with. Yeah, Not even with Lori's habit, and that's been there since the beginning of the series.
Then I will literally turn you into a human pretzel! That is literally the worst thing I have ever heard. You should literally text an embarrassing picture of him to all his friends. You literally disgust me.
I can't believe I have to emphasize this, but saying literally inappropriately is not a personality trait. None of them are. Get a clue.
One of us.
Which one?
One of us.
One of the boys. You would think a simple twist on the show's initial premise would at least be thorough, but oh honey, you are way off. As the title card suggests, Lincoln ends up in a timeline where he has 10 brothers instead of 10 sisters after being fed up with the latter for really stupid reasons. And it goes about how you'd expect. He likes it, he doesn't want to leave, then he really hates it and he can't leave at first. Yeah, this pattern's kind of a cliche. Unlike his sisters who represent tropes but still bear believable personalities, here, every single brother is basically the same gross abrasive idiot. Yes, even male Lily.
Not the baby!
As if Lincoln resembling this behavior at the start of the episode wasn't beneath him? What bothers me so much about this episode is essentially what it represents. All of the Loud sisters are perfectly distinguishable in their own ways, not just because of their design or the tropes, but really because even this early in the show's runtime, their personalities are clear-cut. Lenny's a dumbass, but she's a kind-hearted and thoughtful fashionista. Lucy's a creepy goth, but still usually serene and spiritual. Luna's an energetic and noisy aspiring rock star, but she's still considerate and amiable. Not that they never screwed up those ideas, but you get the gist. Any respectable qualities in the sisters are virtually absent in their male counterparts. Seriously, does anyone on this writing team genuinely believe that Luna Loud is capable of giving a swirly to her own little brother? Or that someone as kind as Lenny would laugh at it? Okay, what if it's their male counterparts?
Sold!
What?
The only conclusion I can come to with this bad writing is that they're capable of these things simply because they're boys. And yeah, it's as insulting as it sounds. Another glaring instance of this show writing on what the characters are rather than who they are, but at least the general consensus is that this episode sucks, so for what it's worth, the fandom is innocent this time. There is little to no individuality among the Loud brothers, even though it's part of what has allowed this series to stand out so spectacularly, even today. And you're insinuating that it's because they're guys this time? Maybe I get that it might have been tedious or straight up impossible to write guy versions of all the Loud sisters thoroughly enough, especially through the span of 11 minutes, but all 10 of them turned out the same? Oh sure, make a whole episode teaching that not all girls are the same, but when 10 of those girls are guys, suddenly they totally are. Couldn't even try with one, just relegate them all to a stereotype and call it a day. And that's not even covering how it was set up. Wanna know why Lincoln wanted to leave in the first place? His sisters wouldn't let him behave the same way. The boy who grew up surrounded by sisters suddenly wants to behave like a male stereotype that contradicts that with no real rhyme or reason. So much for what's basically the family slogan. God, when I say it like that, it really hurts. The writing is lazy at every corner, the premise is forced, there's too many disgusting moments, it undermines the principles behind the iconic theme song, and the justifications for it are abhorrent. At least in this case, it was all a dream. There's actually a reason for the particularly exaggerated nature of the episode, and maybe it's enough for me to not take it to heart as much. But for one, these cheap imitations are insulting enough. 2, this episode is still arbitrarily disgusting. 3, it's stereotypically disrespectful. 4, I doubt these writers realize that after all this. 5, and most importantly, Lincoln still willingly left his family thinking it was all real. It's one giant middle finger to Lincoln's fundamental love for his sisters and the heart of the show. It was bad enough that Kings of the Con had that last issue and its own share, but here, there is so much more wrong, and that's why it's so close to being number 1 on this list. However, this final entry has most of these issues and somehow even more. But first, let me give my thoughts on a few episodes that came close to making this list, or I just have problems that I think are worth mentioning. Hopefully you guys can tell which is which. Heavy Metal. Like I mentioned before, I really do like what Lincoln and Ronnie Ann's bond has grown into, but I really don't dig how it began to some degree. Even then though, they're perfectly better off as just friends, and I'm glad the narrative already went in that direction. Seriously, kids, don't humor the idea that if someone of the opposite sex picks on you or hurts you, it means that they like you. I got enough of that crap with Arnold and Helga, and the Eds and the Cankers, and Chowder and Panini. Jeez, was this really that common? Sometimes it sets a horrible precedent for any relationship, and you might just end up getting hurt. Which in Lincoln's case, he does. Yeah, he gets her phone number by the end, but it doesn't change the fact that this is a very unhealthy gamble. Picture perfect. Most of this episode's a lot of fun, and I'd really like to appreciate the message, but the process doesn't reflect it well enough. No, girls, standing still for a picture for a couple seconds doesn't disregard or undermine your personality, even if that's what Lincoln tells you at first. Pretty much any episode revolving around Flip. Yeah, no matter how you slice it, this character is trash. By far, my least favorite character in the series. He serves a purpose, but it really doesn't make him interesting, likable, or even redeemable in any conceivable way. Not even when he's parodying a prime example of that last one. He's unapologetically disgusting. Hey, at least with Lana, she kinda gets a pass for being a kid. He's boring, his voice is annoying, he's unfunny, and he's a shallow cheapskate. He's like if they took Grunkle's Stand and they removed all the likability, humor, and complex motivations, while amping up the gross factor. Okay, I'm not expecting Gravity Falls levels of depth here, but geez man, there's such a thing as a bare minimum. Music to my fears. Not the first time a one-off character played by Christina V gets gassed up too much in the narrative. Girl, you already voiced an international children's icon. That's not going away anytime soon. So much so that I literally see her in children's products at the supermarket. As for the episode itself, there's just way too many plot holes. Okay, so Luna hurt her hands and needs an understudy for her next gig. Problem 1. Most of the auditions for her understudy don't involve singing her songs, or even guitar players for that matter. Problem 2. When Luna comes clean and lets V's character fill in for her despite the sabotage, she doesn't sing either? I'm pretty sure the audience isn't there for an instrumental cover, yet somehow that's what happens. Am I just correct in assuming that V has no singing talent? Then what gives? You could have tried. They hype up the character this much, but they cheapen out when it matters most? Strife of the party. It's the twins' birthday and Lana wants to be in charge of the decorations for once. I'd have a lot more sympathy for her, especially after Lola's sabotage, if what she wanted wasn't literally trash. Not her love of animals, her mechanical prowess, her adoration of that NASCAR racer, or any other potential theme that could have provoked more subtle discomfort. Literally the first thing she asked for at the party store is the nearest dumpster. How am I supposed to feel bad for her? I know Lana in general isn't afraid to get dirty and she unapologetically grosses people out sometimes, but sometimes this gets taken too far. Only this time, instead of just a disgustingly bad joke, it's basically the whole plot. In the nick of time. Congrats, Sam. I finally can't blame you for the problems of an episode you're involved in. But they're still there. 2 interactions later and suddenly everyone thinks Luna can get this international rock star to perform at a local high school. She didn't leave out any details in the stories, but somehow everyone thinks she could pull this off without issues. No phone number, no backstage pass to his upcoming concert, and no real means to contact him in general. Yet here we are. Not that I doubt he wouldn't have agreed to do it, because of course he did. But half the plot would be gone if Luna had just never agreed to something she knew she couldn't guarantee. Again, Luna's ambitious, but she's far from thoughtless. Then again, they've broken her character in that regard for the sake of her half-assed relationship with Sam before, and asking Mick to do this was her idea.
Luna, I just had the best idea. Get Mick to play the dance.
Okay, 1, Sam is being dumb, again. 2, she's dragging Luna down with her, again. And 3, maybe I can blame her for this episode's problems after all. Party foul. Sure, give the worst character from the spin-off his own episode and repeat exactly what everyone hates about him. A self-centered, disrespectful, literal party animal who somehow still gets away with most of the crap he pulls. Dis the cook. A cranky lady that starves children because she holds a grudge with her mom and is left unpunished when said grudge was a misunderstanding anyways. Yeah, no. Any rational principal would have fired you, Chef Pat. Don't you forget about me. Do I think Lenny's too nice to have realistically gone out of her way to sabotage Lori's scholarship and her future? Yes. Do I think she's also dumb enough to not understand the value of an education, coupled with her selfish priorities? Also yes. Point is, it almost feels like this plot could have gone either way in that regard, so I was hesitant to put this episode on the list. Don't misunderstand though, I still don't agree with what she tried to do, regardless of reasons, and it's not fun to watch anyways. All the rage. Boy, you know the showrunners are on autopilot when they give a character's voice line to the wrong actor!
Clyde, can you get this itch for me? I can't reach.
Other than that though, the episode's fine. The Loathe Boat. What's it say about how much we should care about the episode when I can't name the character in the title with a gun to my head? Especially since it's not even his debut. Who? Singled out. Maybe one of Lynn's few decent episodes, and considering the worst, that's really saying something. It makes perfect sense that she of all people doesn't understand how to genuinely show romantic consideration and affection, let alone receiving it. Which is why I really dig her bond with Liam and her development in those episodes. He helps her realize that she should take her teammates' well-being into consideration to start, and that sometimes a gentle approach to your obligations is the way to go at things, while she brings out his physical capabilities in a way that makes both of them happy. Screw real chemistry though, let's pair it with this random European boy. It makes just as much sense that she forgets her newfound boyfriend exists and she only started dating him to spare herself the awkwardness of being single. Just one problem though. Lynn's friends are dicks. These girls are so caught up with their random ass dates. No, really, even they admitted that.
When did that happen? I don't know.
Just kinda did.
Like yesterday.
During halftime.
That they can't bother noticing their captain sitting alone at a different table? Speaking of random though, who are you? I can't tell if this is whitewashing, more shallow tokenism, or both.
Both is good.
Wow, they really managed to fumble every gay character except the first. You don't have to guess why that is.
Attention!
You'd think at least Margot would notice that her best friend is lonely and unhappy because it's not the first time she's felt isolated to the point of jealousy. Only this time, it's not really a problem on Lynn's end. It would have been really endearing to see Margot show some empathy and reflect her development from what happened before, even for just a moment. But nope, plot's got a plot. Silence of the Luanns. As if painting Luann's playfulness like the habits of a heartless psychopath on more than one occasion wasn't bad enough, let me paint you a different picture in that regard. Here are two characters voiced by Greta Lyle, and god damn this woman has range. This is how you tell them apart. One of these is a callously unapologetic monster hell-bent on her objectives with more than enough sadistic prowess to pull it off. The other one is named Azula. Yeah, it's as jarring as it sounds. Lily is unquestionably the adorable and wholesome baby of the family. I don't mean to exaggerate when I say she's probably the most adorable baby in all of fiction. Well, unless Kirby counts. So the idea that she's capable of what she does here is painfully out of character. Also, obligatory. Not the baby! So much for not being a bad influence on her. Ghosted. If this ghost was an essential university icon, why did it put Lori under the impression that it was haunting her? More notably, how does she not know it existed until after she warded it off? Great Lakes freakout. So Abuela just happens to have a zombie-killing ingredient in her horchata with no allusion to it whatsoever? Yeah, she spent the whole episode perfecting the drink, but what does that have to do with the means to kill zombies? Hide and sneak. I get that the Louds don't have time to visit the Casa Grandes while they're in town for the sake of Mom's job, but you don't have to avoid them altogether. One simple phone call to Bobby saying, "Hey, we're here, but we might be too busy to stop by," would have saved the whole plot. Fashion no-show. Could have just as easily passed off as a Casa Grandes episode, so it really makes you wonder why they really canceled it. Not that we don't already have a clue. Cheer pressure. I'm sorry, how is this bet fair? Lynn's basketball team has to outperform the cheerleaders at cheerleading, but not the other way around? I will give credit though. It was nice seeing Lynn in a much more encouraging and lighthearted state of mind. Especially since it humbles her in the end, but it still made no sense. Food courting. Considering the conclusion, most of this plot wouldn't exist if Lenny had just asked Gavin if he was into guys from the start. You know, since she's trying to set him up with one and he fell for her instead? Schooled. Contrary to popular belief, I'm not really against the idea of a time skip this small. It's only canonically about a year, nobody really looks or acts any differently except for Lily, and Lori's at college from here on out. Just maybe update Lily's appearance and the lyrics in the opening a bit. No more, and I quote. And with how absent Lori is past this point, the guy may as well be singing 1 boy, 9 girls. Apparently Lori's taking a gap year starting in season 8, but who knows how long that's gonna last. As for the episode itself, well, the first couple minutes are great, the first song is decent, and the ending really solidified Lincoln's bond with his friend group. This principal really pisses me off though. Kid butters you up just to ask to be transferred to another class with all of his friends, not in a literal shed, and away from his bully. What makes you think he wants to study abroad? Take it from me, I did not enjoy waking up at 5 a.m. to go to school in a different country. Yeah, I've been in Lincoln's situation here, it's not fun. He told her himself he just wanted to transfer to another classroom, and it's easy to guess why that is, but screw it. I'm sure this normal kid just really values his education. It won't be the first time this seemingly composed principal is annoyingly out of touch with their students. No Time to Spy. I know it's a little jarring to critique a whole movie here, but it's technically season 7's finale. Production slots and everything. As much as I enjoy Jennifer Coolidge's voice work, it was hard for me to care about a whole hour-and-a-half movie revolving around her character. She didn't really have that many appearances beforehand, and she's not even voicing her this time? Bruh. Other than that though, most of my thoughts on this film are positive, so I'll save those for next time. Okay, with all that off my chest, let's dive into the epitome of the worst. Have you ever seen such an awful episode of a series that you basically pretend that it isn't canon? Okay, for me that's this whole listing, but still. You've all been curious, I laid out some hints. It's by far the most hated and absolute worst of the— Why am I building this up? We know it's no such luck. I kinda already gave it away earlier. This episode really just has everything that's horrible about the episodes I already listed, and pretty much encapsulates everything wrong with this franchise. I don't really know where to start after summarizing, it's that bad. Just a heads up though, I might get uncomfortably angry here, but I'll still strive to be impartial as usual. First, let's acknowledge the only good that came out of it. Another perfectly adorable Lily moment. Now, all the bad stuff that is so awful, it actually sparked a ton of fanfiction against it. Even worse, it got someone who usually disregards the mere prospect like me to agree with it. The episode goes off how you would expect out of its initial premise. Having 10 sisters means non-stop supportive attendance from Lincoln for their activities, and when he tries to take a break from it all, just for maybe one day, he gets threatened with a bat by Lynn.
What the hell is wrong with you?
God, if I had to have a least favorite loud sister, it'd probably be her. Right off the bat,
Oh my god, I swear this wasn't planned!
right from the get-go, this episode already has some really messed up connotations. Yeah, you heard that right. She threatens him with a bat for not wanting to go to her softball game. And when she happens to lose the one time he's present, she's convinced he's bad luck and tries to ostracize him from the rest of the family. Lincoln takes advantage of the notion just to get a break, and he even goes along with Lynn's superstitious cruelty. At first, it might have been fine, but it gets really bad though, when she succeeds at convincing the entire family. Yeah, even the ones that are too smart to be this gullible get convinced way too easily. Okay, just to recap so far. Stereotyping and character derailment? Check. Mean-spirited writing? Check. Forced elements that the narrative would fall apart without? Check. Everyone breaking character for shallow or stupid reasons? Check. We're only halfway through the episode and we already got everything wrong with the previous entries, one of which is twice as long, and all that is taken to a whole new extreme. Even with his initial dishonesty, Lincoln sure as hell does not deserve any of what's coming. He can't have meals with the family, he can't go to the movie theater with them, and he can't go to the beach for a celebration because apparently he's cursed with bad luck or something. If his parents were trying to teach him a lesson about flaking, maybe I could understand if that didn't last. It'd be perfectly in character for them to let it play out for a bit, but that implication is not made whatsoever. In fact, Rita and Lynn Sr. are straight up buying into the callous paranoia. As if all that wasn't bad enough, they board up his room and force him to sleep and eat breakfast in the backyard through the doggy door. What the fuck? Was even the couch out of the question somehow? This is by definition child abuse. At least when Lynn was babysitting, there's the minor possibility that she's really just that naive. But here, this is all straight up criminal. Literally. According to interviews, it's even more aggravatingly sad that Lucy wanted to stick up for him, but she was too afraid to stand up to any of them. As if this family didn't look awful enough here.
Okay, but that's worse. I mean, you do get how that's worse, right?
Sometimes she's so creepy and reserved that I forget the fact that she's an innocent girl that needs to be protected. With that knowledge, this implication doesn't seem far-fetched. Where was I? Oh, right. An 11-year-old boy literally has to beg to be let inside his own house. Even when I put all the legal issues aside, the family's behavior is so unbearably cruel. Like this one moment where Lola shoves him out of the door after he begs to be let in the house. Even for someone as pompous as her, this was just too much. You know how I said some of the sisters remind me of other characters I despise, but I managed to move past that? Part of that is owed to the amazing character development, especially Lola's. The sassy pageant star that knows well enough what it's like to be distressingly isolated from the family somehow bears no real sympathy for Lincoln here? Yeah, the boy that coaches you in your successful pageant career, hugs you when you're scared, and forfeits a contest to help you with your embarrassing illiteracy? Nah, screw him. He's cursed beyond salvation because the girl, notorious for her empty superstitions, said so. It's honestly amazing how they made a perfect balance of bratty but sympathetic, only for most of it to be undone in this one simple moment. That's how awful this episode is. Do these writers have any idea how horrible it is to consistently and simultaneously be disregarded, abused, and threatened by your own family for self-righteously cruel and obnoxious reasons? And it doesn't stop there. Lincoln proves that he isn't bad luck by disguising himself as a mascot at Lynn's next match, resulting in everyone apologizing to him. Okay, I gotta say it myself this time. Bullshit! No way in hell even he would forgive them that easily, especially considering what happens next. To start,
we sold all your furniture.
Wait, what?
Then he gets to go to the beach after all, but he has to wear that squirrel suit and the episode ends.
Is this some kind of twisted joke?
I usually don't take some conclusive consequences in cartoons like these seriously, usually because it's funny, but here, I'm really not laughing. This series is grounded enough in realism for me to not take this lightly, and this whole episode is too poorly written for me to even consider it. Buddy, do you know how uncomfortable and hazardous fursuits are in hot weather? As if Lynn Sr. and Rita didn't have enough, and I say this without exaggerating, child abuse accusations. Making him do this just adds to the charges. Seriously, who signed off on this episode? Not to be too realistic, but I'm not kidding when I say Lincoln could legally call the police, his parents would be tried and convicted, it wouldn't be the first time his mom goes to jail, his older sisters would go to juvie, especially Lynn, he and his younger ones would fall into foster care, and just like that, the iconic family we know and love would be tragically and completely dismantled. I have to ask, would the abuse have stopped at any point if Lincoln didn't do what he did? Trick question. It didn't anyways. We just carry on with the next episode like nothing happened. This episode destroys the very fundamentals of this entire franchise in a much crueler way that even one of the boys couldn't. While that episode was at least just a literal nightmare, here, there are no holds barred with its mischaracterizations, its negligence, its cruelty, and its disregard for everything that brought the show to glory. 1 boy, 10 girls, wouldn't trade it for the world, no exceptions. The one principle, the one constant that should be the bare minimum with this series is outright betrayed. As much as this episode reminds me of my own traumatic experiences, and even if I don't hold that conviction with some of my own family, somehow and some way, I refuse to believe that this is what the Louds could ever be capable of in the hands of any decent writers. In the same way, I refuse to believe that they're all liars, thoughtless cowards, and toxic girlfriends too self-centered to grow as people. The mere prospect of a whole family, especially one this big, being ripped apart, while such a simple but essential conviction is destroyed, especially out of the mindless volition of this god-awful writing, it should all be unfathomable, yet here we are with this abomination of an episode. In the grand scheme of things, I have to make an obvious but important observation that everyone should grasp. This is fiction. It can only go so far with matching reality and relating to the real people in its audiences. And putting technical issues aside, it'll only ever be as good as the thinking of the people behind the keyboards. With that being said, what exactly is this franchise aimed at kids teaching them in its worst moments? You can't possibly be yourself if it's for romance? Don't learn anything about your friends unless you start dating them? It's okay to be abusive as long as you're trying to prove something? Keep lying even when you don't have to? Don't stand up for yourself because you'll make things worse? Your bad habits make you who you are as long as you never break them? You're always better off with girls than with boys? Child abuse is okay under certain circumstances? When the ideas are bad enough, you can see how it all should have fallen apart. A beloved and loving family of 13 otherwise perfectly endearing characters who have connected with so many people throughout the past 9 years, completely and heartbreakingly undone. Most people have really lost all respect and or adoration for this franchise, and I can see why. The lack of genuine engagement from its own community I mentioned really reflects that. Its worst episodes are egregious, most of its episodes in general are a heaping pile of mediocrity, and a lot of good ones are a relatively distant memory. It's like this cartoon nowadays bears no real substance, so the fandom just hinges on its own imagination, for better or worse. It's the internet of all places, you don't have to guess where that leads sometimes. If you're involved in mainstream animation in any way, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you think of the Loud House? The degeneracy and soullessness behind most of its fan art? The bastard that created it who presumably deserves to be jailed? The declining quality and mediocrity that has more or less left it in obscurity? For me, it's all that. But as far as the show itself is directly concerned, I've noticed a couple things. Some people say that the series went downhill ever since Savino got fired, and it might seem that way, but as far as the quality since his dismissal is concerned, I'd have to partially disagree. I'm not trying to pass my rankings as definitive more or less, but he was involved in half the episodes on this list, including the top 2. So I don't think it can be that simple. With all this knowledge, being uninvolved with this franchise for most of its runtime almost felt like a blessing to me. Despite my agreement with most of the general consensus, and despite the fact that I've been mostly an outsider with this franchise, I don't want to give up on it. Maybe it's my sense of observance, or my newfound love for most of its characters, but I think there are means to strive for a lot of the good it once had, and sometimes still does. For that to make any real sense though, I gotta finish my next video. For now, I'll just give away the title.